Curtis. The universe, the Legends of Grayskull podcast.
Legends of Grayskull is a fan podcast exploring the vast worlds of He-Man and She-Ra. Join Sean Scavarna and Matthew Duke as they discuss the history and mystery of Eternia and Etheria, diving deep into all incarnations of Masters of the Universe.
Hey, you know who's back? It's the Legends of Grayskull podcast. Now that you know, let's go. Get ready for the show. It's the Legends of Grayskull podcast. Sit back and enjoy the ride. Right now.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to L.O.G on MYP. This is the fan mini-series where Curtis Ackerman and Matthew Duch tackled the He-Man and the Masters of the Universe 2002 series by Mike Young Productions. We're going episode by episode. We're giving you our ratings, our reviews, our Power Sword ranking. We're breaking down the good and the bad. Today, we are all the way Season 1, Episode 23, The Sweet Smell of Victory. But before we get to that, Curtis, how are you smelling today?
Smelling pretty dang good.
Excellent. We don't want no stinkiness here. There's going to be enough of that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, this is it, man. We're in the final stretch here. 4 episodes to go. How are you feeling?
Yep. Feeling pretty good. I'm excited for. I don't need you to do it ahead of time, but I'm excited to hear the alternate titles of this from different places, because I feel like this episode, while the title makes sense, I feel like there could also be potential other ways that they could have gone with it. So I'm interested to see what we end up with.
All right. Well, let's get into it then. All right. So we are on episode 23, The Sweet Smell of Victory. This was written by Kevin D. Campbell, directed by Gary Hartel, story edited by Dean Stefan. The final draft was finished on July 26th of 2002, and the original U.S. air date was April 12th of 2003, just after my 18th birthday. And the Cartoon Network episode description: when a low-level crook tries to join Skeletor, an accident mutates him into a new supervillain intent on destroying the Masters. Not quite accurate. He's intent on destroying the Masters because that's what Skeletor wants.
Mm-hmm.
He's intent on joining up.
Yeah, he's this is kind of a continuation off of the last episode where, we saw the crab people. Like right now, Evil Warriors is like a great place to be. Like people all over Eternia are going like that's the team to be on right now. Like I know they haven't won any major victories yet over He-Man, but those are the cool guys, and we all want to be a part of it.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
It is interesting that they don't actually say, like, it's funny that here they try and hide who this low-level crook mutates into. With the episode title, Sweet Smell of Victory, like, everybody knew it was going to be a Stinkor episode, which, of course, had
Spoiler
everybody
alert.
excited.
Oh.
Those Cartoon Network episode descriptions always crack me up for what they like try and keep secret, but then other times they'll just be like, and now Roboto comes and joins everybody.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll break right into it here. First scene, we find Oedipus, who we first saw back in Snake Pit, in the Royal Dungeon across from Cobra Khan.
Mm-hmm.
He has either escaped or gotten parole. Time for good behavior, I don't know, but he is out and he is cruising the desert, and he stumbles upon this old workshop right at the same time that the evil warriors are sent there. So coincidences abound right off the start.
Yeah, I'm not sure how he got out from the last episode. Maybe some confusion with the whole Cobra Khan jailbreak. Maybe as things were going on, maybe he was able to sneak out somehow. We're not really sure. They don't go into it, but that's all right. I don't know that we need to go into it. He does reference back to them putting him in prison for some reason. We don't know what he did or why he was there, but he definitely is holding a grudge.
I like to imagine he was just, for some reason, I can't remember, because we got a season 2 episode that's going to deal a little bit more with him. I want to say he just became a thief. So I feel like he did his time served. He got caught stealing in the royal marketplace. They locked him up. He did his year or whatever, 6 months of good behavior, and they let him go. But he's just a career criminal at this point. So he's going to go get into more trouble.
Cobra Khan also took out those guards before he left and stuff. So maybe they, ended up asking him some questions. Maybe he participated.
Maybe he snitched a little bit.
Who knows? He may have given them some information, and then they decided, you know what, we're going to go ahead and let you go. So
fair enough. Yeah. So we get to see Merman, Trapjaw, Whiplash, and Triclops.
Mm-hmm.
They show up and they are after this vial.
Necrosia.
Thank you. I was trying to find my notes where I wrote that down.
Yeah.
Luckily, He-Man and company show up at the same time to stop them. I love the interaction here where He-Man's not even sure why they want it, but because Skeletor wants it, he's not going to get it.
Yeah, he specifically says if Skeletor wants it, it can't be for any good purpose. And that made me kind of think for a little bit, because I don't know, I don't want He-Man to be naive. I don't want him to think that everybody is so redeemable that he's just giving people the benefit of the doubt when they don't deserve it. But at the same time, this feels kind of like the opposite direction. This feels like, Skeletor is never going to change his ways. And so even though I don't know what he needs this for, it could be some good purpose. I mean, maybe not good for like Eternia, but maybe good for something, for somebody or whatever. Maybe somebody in the Evil Warriors is sick and this is going to fix them. There's a lot of things it could be, but for him to jump to the conclusion that if Skeletor wants this, it's definitely bad. I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence on this one. Like I said, I don't want him to just be naive, but at the same time, I don't want him to think that people aren't able to do good. So
yeah, well, but that's where we've been. I mean, he didn't reform with his turnabout shock collar. Yeah. So there's no redeeming him now. That's where we're at.
I just feel like there should be a little bit of hope, that at some point, someday, especially knowing that Skeletor is Keldor in this universe and it's his uncle. Like, you would think that there would be, some sort of hope that he would have that one day he'll turn a new leaf.
See, you bring up an interesting point there. Everybody knows that Skeletor was Keldor in this universe, but it's actually never mentioned that he and Randor are brothers.
Oh, okay.
So
I guess I just assumed that
they
everybody knew
they are brothers, but it's technically actually never revealed in the series. That was going to be a big season 3 plot point.
Gotcha.
So there are certain, obviously Keldor and Randor know, and probably some of the higher up masters, but He-Man actually, even in this series, does not know that Keldor is his uncle. Gotcha. And he never finds out in what we see. So
yeah.
But regardless, we have a conflict in this old abandoned laboratory. We see Roboto for the first time in a few episodes, and he is just coming out guns a-blazing, literally. I love his Michael Jackson moon shoes roller walk.
That was so unnecessary.
It was just cool points.
Like, they're just having an all-out just battle, right? Like, just laser blasts everywhere. Man-at-Arms and Teela are there as well. So you've got, 4 evil warriors, 4 masters, just going at it. And in the middle of nowhere, like, all of a sudden, Roboto just turns on these tracks on the bottom of his feet and moonwalks for absolutely no reason. Like, and moonwalks for a few seconds and then starts just firing, which he could have just fired from where he was at. There was absolutely no reason to moonwalk. I don't know. okay, it is what it is. It's a cartoon, but yeah, that was it was interesting.
In this series, especially, I see a lot of similarities between Roboto and Data from Next Generation. Where I feel like he, especially in this episode, he's constantly trying to like become more self-aware, more human. And so those are kind of some of the like he's going for the style points instead of just the robot calculated. Yes, I can just shoot, but like I see them twirling weapons and posturing all the time. So what can I do?
Maybe that's it. I mean, he did in the first episode that we see him. He gets smacked around pretty good by Tila, just like telling him that he's not good enough and he's, he's basically just a chess robot and stuff. And even after he upgrades himself and becomes like this big giant linebacker robot, she's still like, no, just like you're basically you're useless. So maybe that's in his head, I guess, and maybe he is trying to, like you said, be more human or be better, whatever.
Yeah,
you do see out throughout this episode that he is doubting himself, which is kind of a lingering storyline. So
he does. He ends up taking the whole place down. He ends up shooting all the support beams. The roof comes down. He-Man's able to hold the roof up long enough for the Masters to escape. Triclops, as he's exiting, sees the perfect opportunity to take down He-Man. Unfortunately, his visor got cracked in the battle. He's not able to get his shot off.
Yeah,
I really like that.
Just flat out like nailed him in the eye with the sword. And I was like, wow, that was pretty brutal. Like he actually came crashing down with the sword on his eye.
Yeah. No, this was a great battle again. It was it really amped up. You felt it, you felt Triclops' joy when he's like, oh, I've got him. Back turned, holding up the roof. Triclops just like, oh baby, this is it.
Yeah, free shot.
Yeah. And then he's not able to get it. I felt it was a really well-paced, well-animated, and well-thought-out battle. And it does end with the Evil Warriors succeeding, which is always refreshing to see, especially after growing up in the 80s when they never were able to do anything. Yeah. They are able to get the Necrosia, and they escape to Snake Mountain while He-Man and company lick their wounds.
Yeah, not to be confused with Ambrosia, which is a totally different thing in Eternia.
Completely different.
Yeah, Ambrosia good, Necrosia bad, but apparently both of them make things bigger, as we will find out here soon. So anything that ends in Oja, watch out because somebody's getting bigger.
So. We meet back up. We see Oedipus has also escaped the destruction. He ends up walking to Snake Mountain and walks right into Triclops
after finding a damaged Doomseeker at the fight.
Yep. Yeah. He goes to return the Doomseeker to Triclops. He tells Triclops he wants to join up. Enlist me. Yeah, let's go.
He wants an application. He heard good things. He heard there's a referral bonus or something. He's not sure if Triclops wants the referral bonus.
Right. So. I like too that he's going to Triclops. Yeah. Like he's not just marching into the throne room. He's like, hey buddy, come on. Like I saw you there. You're cool. I got your Doomseeker. And something struck me on this watch that has never struck me before. But watching Oedipus and Triclops' banter in his lab.
Yeah.
If they hadn't mutated him, he could have become like the Orko of the Evil Warriors.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And I never thought about them needing something like that, but just a little creature palling around with Triclops, messing stuff up. Like, I'm like, that's interesting that in all the series, they've never gone there with anybody.
And he has kind of whoever was doing the voice acting for him was very much doing like a Gollum kind of thing.
Yes.
Yeah. So it even gives him a little bit more of that like little creepy guy kind of vibe.
Yeah. So, and even the third person talking, Oedipus, that's who locked Oedipus up. Oedipus wants to join Evil Warriors. Oedipus, like, yeah. No, for sure. There was definitely that vibe there. But yeah, just watching this scene with Triclops and Otis, I'm like, you know what? They could have just done this, and I would have been on board for it.
And Triclops seems as irritated with him as Man at Arms does with Orko. Like it's
Yeah.
very much that, you know, you've got the tinkerer kind of the group, and then this other little creature that's just annoying the piss out of him. So
Absolutely.
he goes off. He's being summoned by a Skeletor. He's got to go give him an update on the Necrosia, and tells Otis he better be gone by the time he gets back.
Which Otis clearly sees that Triclops is testing him.
Oh yeah,
and he needs to prove himself. He definitely doesn't mean that Otis should leave.
No. What he means is mess with that thing that I told you not to mess with, and mess with my stuff. And see what you can do. That's the test for sure.
Absolutely. Back at the palace, we've got Roboto blaming himself for the escape of the evil warriors, which, yeah, you did. So, but Man at Arms comes through again. Strategic, solid-minded Man at Arms, and he doesn't try to tell him like, well, it's not your fault. He's just tell him don't dwell on the defeat. Like it's gonna happen. We're gonna lose some, we'll win some, but if you dwell on it, that's gonna be, you know, your downfall.
Which is a little bit heartfelt for Man at Arms. Like I know he's not flat out just being like, hey guy, keep your chin up, you know, like he's not trying to boost his self-esteem, but he is letting him know that, hey, if you kind of hang out in this space of you know, being upset with yourself, like that's not helping you get better. Like just, you know, learn from it, move on, kind of and get better. So it is a little encouraging, but at the same time, there is still kind of that Man at Arms. Like I'm not gonna sugarcoat this too.
Well, that's what I mean. It was definitely encouraging, especially for Man at Arms is like, dude, I just opened my heart to you, Robot.
Right.
But like I like the fact that it was a serious lesson where, because it's easy to go, oh no, Roboto, it wasn't your fault. But like,
you kind of blew out the support beams and stuff and took down the whole building. Yeah.
So I like that they didn't go that route where it's like, well, we were all there. No one's fault. Like, dude, you messed up. But getting into, like you said, getting in his headspace is where, like, that's just a really good lesson. That, you're gonna
if it was me, what I would have said is, hey man, like you tried to like lay out some strategic laser blast and they moved out of the way. Like, you know, it's really not your fault. Maybe cut down on the moonwalk. Maybe the moonwalk's not necessary. You know,
maybe he should have done more moonwalking.
I think
he should have gotten into a better position.
Instead of moonwalking, he could have been doing some hand-to-hand combat that wouldn't have taken out the beams. I don't know, but
listen, he spent a lot of money on those roller shoe upgrades, so he's gonna use them. Dang it,
for sure.
We get back to Snake Mountain. Triclops is reporting to Skeletor that the device he was working on is nearly complete, and he is about to add the Necrosia to it. Beastman walks in and is curious what the device is for. And Evil Lynn sarcastically replies that it's meant to remove Beastman's stench.
To where a few people kind of are like, yeah, you kind of stink. And like, we don't hear anything other than that. Like at no point do they go, no, it's really for this other thing.
Thank you. I was waiting for the like when Evil Lynn first said it, and this is since I first watched the episode. I'm like, that's funny. What's it really for? Yeah. And then like Merman's like, yeah, dude, you stink. And I'm like, no, what's it? I'm that meme of Padme. Like,
so
what's it really for?
Yeah. So at
what's
this
it
point,
really for, Anakin?
If it really is just to get rid of Beastman's smell, that's not really the most nefarious of things. So that, you know, going back to the whole He-Man's like, you know, it can't be for anything good. Well, you know, I mean, they're just trying to make Beastman not smell so bad. So as far as we know, that's the plan with this. We don't know anything other than that at this point.
Well, they never. I mean, at the end of the day, you've got to believe that that's what they were doing.
Yeah, unless Triclops had some other, you know, technological use for it that we're just not aware of and they never bring up in the episode. As far as we know, it's just to make Beastman smell less offensive. So
how bad does Beastman smell? Like,
I mean, clearly not as bad as somebody else we'll talk about later, but
well, true.
yeah, but bad enough that they felt like they needed to go on a mission to try to, find some anti-Beastman cologne.
Yeah, this is still. I'll put it right out here right now. This is my biggest complaint with the episode is that the whole plot revolves initially around Beastman's stench removal, which I like the running gag because they've done that before, like with Beastman's smell. So like Evil Lynn's joke is a funny joke. The problem is it never turns into a joke. It's just
I don't know that it is a joke. I think it's
right.
And I mean, clearly, from knowing what happens in the rest of the episode, we know kind of that this creates something even more stinky. But maybe by analyzing it and doing Triclops' thing, maybe he was going to be able to use some sort of properties of it in order to combat Beastman. We don't really know what the end goal was or how they were going to get there, but
it's definitely not what happened. So we get back to Triclops' laboratory. Oedipus is there by himself.
Well, this is after we hear like an explosion, right? Like there's like some sort of loud noise.
I think it just cuts to Oedipus first, but
I thought there was like a loud noise, and that's why they all kind of
because we see Oedipus tinkering around with it. We see him realizing that's he thinks Triclops, and that's the other thing. He assumes Triclops was about to like pour it all in there, so he does it. He pours a little bit at first, nothing happens. He pours a lot more. He messes with some stuff. The machine starts to shake, and then it explodes. And we see his laboratory is in flames. There's flames everywhere. We see the shadow of Oedipus being surrounded by these fumes as he mutates in very werewolf-like into this giant creature.
Grows. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oedipus is no longer a small guy.
No, it's a really great scene. Well animated, flames everywhere. He's knocking stuff over. He manages to grab a mask because there is such a horrible stench coming out of the machine. Oedipus is able to put the mask on and get out of the lab. Taking the mask off, he realizes that the stench is not only following him, but it is him.
And I love this part of this. I just want to kind of take a second to say, like, at the time that I'm watching this episode of this series, I was also reading the Icons of Evil comic books, which at some point I think we should probably do a review of. I think would be great. And this felt like this episode specifically, like whenever I think of the Icons of Evil, I always put this episode in with that. Like I feel like this could have been its own issue in that series. Because it very much deals with the origin story of this character, which is what I loved about those comic books, because it takes these characters that you've known and you've grown up with, but you don't really know how they became to be what they are. And it gives you more to it. And it may not be the original storyline that whoever back in the early 80s created this character had in mind, but it gives us a story to go with that character, which just makes them, I don't know, just cooler. And I do like this a lot. I like this, how this has created him into what we will know as Stinkor, but he doesn't go by that till the end of the episode.
Yeah, it's very Marvel Cinematic Universe origin story.
Yeah, I like it.
We don't see the full Stinkor until the very end,
right?
But yeah. So then Stinkor Oedipus still he heads into the throne room and presents himself to Skeletor. And claims that he has the power of stink and he wants to become an evil warrior. Everyone is so repulsed by his odor, though, that he is kicked out of Snake Mountain immediately.
Yep.
I love the idea that Skeletor can still smell. And I love Skeletor holding his nose cavity. That just cracks me up every time.
Yeah.
As the dejected Oedipus walks through the forest, his powerful stench causes plant life to wither and die. Eventually, his smell reaches a herd of Eternian Unilopes that run away from the smell and cause a stampede towards the royal palace.
I just love that animal name, by the way.
The
Unilopes.
Unilopes.
Yeah. Unilopes. Just a great, like, why don't we have Unilopes? Like, that's just a cool sounding name, for a animal.
They look great too. I mean,
Yeah.
they're big
Absolutely.
and they're massive, and yeah, they're gonna stampede the palace. Mechanic sees them and raises the alarm. Roboto identifies them as Unilopes, and he assumes that they're being controlled by Beastman. So he flies off to find Beastman and stop him, thinking if he can knock out Beastman, that they'll be docile again.
Mm-hmm.
Good logic. I can't, you can't fault him there.
Yeah, you got these normally kind of peaceful creatures storming the palace for no reason. It makes sense that you would think that it's Beastman.
Yep. The other masters successfully managed to steer the beast away from the palace. Roboto blames himself for making an error as he fails to find Beastman. And unfortunately left the master shorthanded again. So
Yep. And then
just Roboto's having a day.
Yeah, and then they're talking about how the creatures are normally kind of docile and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not frightened easily. But Stratos says they do have an aversion to smell. They have there's a new evil in town, and it's stinky. So
Something stinky.
Yes.
I'm so glad Stratos is in this episode.
We get a lot of heavy hitters because we see Buzz off here in a little bit too. Like, we just said Mechanic. Like, there's a lot of characters in this one.
I think we saw Ram Man. Like, we're in full Masters roster here, and they are doing a good job now of cycling through them.
Yeah, I mean, this is what you would have expected last episode when they called an alpha level threat on Cobra Khan, and we got like 3 masters instead of the whole shebang. So
exactly.
But I tell you what, something stinks, everybody's involved. We're not dealing with stink. Yeah.
Skeletor, having watched these events unfold via the Doomseeker, invites Oedipus back to Snake Mountain and encourages him to lead the evil warriors in an attack on the royal palace. And if the attack is successful, he can join the evil warriors. So Skeletor, again, we're in this classic Mike Young Skeletor where something happens, he sees his opportunity to use it and does so. So Oedipus leads an attack on the palace. Several guards, repelled by the smell, abandon their posts. Ram Man wakes up the napping Prince Adam, and Adam immediately transforms into He-Man. One of our latest transformations in the series here. So we saw He-Man earlier, but we didn't get a transformation.
Which at this point, they don't really know that there's a bad guy involved. They just know there's a smell.
Right.
So I don't know what the thought process is with summoning He-Man. Like, I don't know what he's going to fight per se. But it is what it is. And the reason I say that is because there's other episodes where they've been against a credible threat that he has waited to just turn into He-Man. But here it's like, well, there's a stink. There's no bad guys that we can see in sight. Really, better become He-Man. Like, okay, all right.
Maybe Adam's just hoping that the power of He-Man will be able to, his super smelling will be able to repulse the smell, and
maybe
he won't have to.
I think it would have been nice to see some like He-Man like tornado arm action or something where he tried to like push the smell away, or some sort of somehow using his He-Man abilities to divert some of the smell and stuff. But we don't really see that here.
Yeah, it's definitely like either the tornado arms would be a nice reference to Filmation. Super breath would be fine. Like, and I would want He-Man to come up short, but still, it is interesting that they never even attempt it.
Right.
Also, very lucky for Skeletor that Cyclone is apparently the one master that is on holiday.
Cyclone would be great here. Yeah, for sure.
So He-Man and Man-at-Arms depart to investigate the source of the smell. They locate Oedipus, but quickly realize that he is a diversion as the other evil warriors are attacking the palace. Blinded by Oedipus's cloud of stink, Man-at-Arms crashes his sky sled and has to be saved by He-Man.
He crashes bad too. He just like head on, just and then happens to land right into He-Man's arms.
I'm telling you, man, the animation, the fights, all this, like everything's getting cranked up here towards the end of the season. You can feel that the animators are comfortable with these characters. They know this world, like.
Well, even so much of like when you're watching He-Man try to fight through this smell and stuff, you see like his eyes are bloodshot.
Yes.
Like, which is a small detail to see in the cartoon. Like as far as them drawing out the animation and stuff, that's a very tiny detail, but like you see his eyes watering and they're bloodshot. Like this is animation to the 10th power. So
absolutely. Duncan radios Roboto, telling him he's got to protect the palace. Robato's
just kind of sitting there sulking at this point. Like
very human. Very human.
Yeah.
Roboto is reluctant, saying that he doesn't want his incompetence to risk yet another defeat. Man-at-Arms reminds Roboto he is sworn as a master of the universe and it is his duty to protect the palace.
This isn't initially I wrote down Man-at-Arms gives him a pep talk, but it's really not. It's not like
it's a Man-at-Arms pep talk.
Yeah, it's not like a hey, we need you, like you're whatever. It's like, hey, you signed up for this. You need to get off your ass and do something. Like this is your duty. And this is what we've talked about throughout the whole season. Like he's very duty bound. Like it is.
Yes.
You signed up for this. Like you owe us this. You need to perform. This is not a time for you to sit around and sulk. So
and out of them, like Roboto is one of the biggest, like he chose this.
Yeah.
He could have just stayed being a chess robot. He chose to upgrade himself. He chose to keep doing this. He chose to sign up. And it's kind of an interesting, even episodes apart, it's an interesting dichotomy between Oedipus's journey here, where Oedipus is trying to do the same thing, just on the evil side. So it's really nicely done how this all just kind of comes around.
So Roboto then, like he looks through the stink and he identifies Oedipus and he analyzes them and he's looking for a weakness. And he thinks he discovers something, which he tells Man-at-Arms and He-Man, but we don't know at this point, which I think is cool. I
like how they did it.
Yeah, I don't like when they spoon feed us kind of what is going on. So the fact that he identified an opportunity, but we don't know it, allows us to then see it play out, which was awesome.
Absolutely. But even then, I love how tough it is for He-Man and Battle Cat to get there. Like you said, you're seeing the bloodshot eyes. They're coughing. They're sputtering.
He's got to identify a spot where there's an opening in the stink for Battle Cat to kind of hide and wait. And then he can kind of lure Oedipus into that area so then Battle Cat can attack.
I'd actually forgotten how exactly this episode ended. And when He-Man and Battle Cat are first launching at Oedipus and he sends up that huge stink blast, I'm like, oh, and then Battle Cat gets knocked out. Just assuming, because that's how it goes. So I was pleasantly surprised.
Battle Cat does well here.
No, he does. So then when he takes the blast and lands and he's still up, I'm like, oh, okay. Like, let's go, Battle Cat. You've learned some stuff too over the past 3 episodes.
Yep.
So Battle Cat finds like a little pocket to hide in. He-Man goes to take Oedipus head on, as close as he can get. But really, they've just turned the Evil Warriors' own scheme onto them. Really, He-Man is the distraction. Battle Cat attacks Oedipus and is able to knock off the gas mask.
He-Man throws like this giant rock that he carves out. He throws it at Oedipus to where he moves out of the way, and he's like, "Ha, you missed!" But He-Man wasn't trying to hit him anyway. He-Man was just trying to get him to this other area where Battle Cat was at so that he could attack and knock the mask off. Because what we find out is that through Roboto, like looking him up and down, notice that he's got a mask on, which why the hell is he wearing a mask?
Right.
Oh, he can't even stand his own stink.
Yep.
So let's use it against him, kind of thing. So
100%, and it works. Once Oedipus is overpowered by his own stench, He-Man is able to get close to him. He picks him up and he launches him at the approaching evil warriors on the Griffins, knocking them all out in one stinky bowling ball blast.
and Skeletor signals for retreat. So,
Oh yeah,
which usually he's the one that's trying to hang in there, even when everybody else is like, "No, this is lost, man."
Right.
But yeah, no, he's like, "Yep, retreat, we're done." So
absolutely, the victory over Skeletor leaves Roboto feeling confident in his abilities again. And they're back at Snake Mountain.
this is the part that I love. The where Roboto's he's explaining his plan, but if you notice, he's explaining the plan to Tila. So it's like a continuation of the other Roboto episode where he's still trying to justify his existence to Tila. He's like, he's like, no. So see, what happened was I'm sitting there analyzing it, and I realized that I could use his own stink against him. Like this is like he's trying to sell her on this brilliant plan that he put together, and she just seems very unimpressed, just like, you know, whatever.
Why won't you love me, Tila?
Right. And then Adam comes up, and you see like the stink clouds coming off of him because he's just been fighting him as He-Man. Apparently, the transformation does nothing to get rid of the smell.
Doesn't get rid of the smell.
Yeah, so Tila says that Adam stinks, and then he turns around and blames it on Cringer as if Cringer made a mess. So.
And Cringer gets mad too.
Like, yeah. This would be a moment where if Cringer talked, this would be the perfect moment for him to be like, the hell, man, come on. Like, I just saved the day, you know, I just knocked the guy's mask off.
He did stuff. Too. Yeah. And this is such a well-written episode. Like,
oh yeah.
And you get all that from Cringer in the animation too. Yeah. That's the other thing. It's like he doesn't, you know, yes, I've said many times how I'm upset that they went with non-talking Cringer, but they still did a good job of giving him personality.
Yeah.
So,
but yeah, you're right. We're back at Snake Mountain, and everybody's scrubbing armor and getting the stench off, with the exception of one person, Oedipus, because Skeletor says he's proven his worth.
Yes.
And Oedipus is now basically part of the team.
Yep, and he debuts his new look where he's got the traditional-esque
updated he says Oedipus
chest armor.
Yeah, I'm no longer
a gas
Oedipus.
Mask.
Yeah, he's not Oedipus anymore. He's Stinkor. So for those of you who didn't know, we're talking about Stinkor the whole time.
They never even knew it.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I love the you know how we go to that upgraded armor at the end, but I don't know if he put that together himself, if Triclops helped him with that.
No, I think Skeletor had Triclops do. I think that's why Skeletor called the retreat, because he's like, okay, this dude has a major flaw here. Right. So we need to get him suited up so that it doesn't, because now he's got the built-in gas mask. Yep. He's got the armor. He's like, no, he is a valuable asset. He's powerful, but we need to control
I like that idea that's why he signaled the retreat, so that they can go back. They're like, okay, because it does feel like throughout this series, like there's certain things where Skeletor's like, okay, these things worked, these things didn't. Let's, you know, continue to change and grow and learn and all that kind of stuff. So that does feel like a very Skeletor thing for him to go, hey, let's retreat, let's go back, let's get this guy some new armor, protect himself, and then let's come up with our next scheme.
And now he's got part of that armor upgrade in 2000X is they added the gas tanks to the back of the armor, which I always looked at as like it kind of stores up his stink. So like I think by wearing the armor, it kind of takes down his power level a little bit, because before it was like everywhere, right? Everywhere he went,
he couldn't control it. It was just all over. Yeah.
Right now it's kind of like just around him. He's not affected by it with the armor. You know, even the people in the room with him aren't as affected. So Skeletor had to make the trade-off of, okay, we've got to control this a bit. It's going to take down his overall power level, but it's going to make it manageable, like to where we can actually use it.
Right.
So it's kind of a neat trade-off there, and it's great seeing Stinkor all decked out. You know, just being
one of the
Stinkor.
best redesigns too. Like,
Right.
yeah, I absolutely love that redesign.
And he's a character that I loved as a kid. I loved playing with Stinkor with that patchouli smell. Like he was awesome.
It didn't do anything for me, but
No?
I did love just the color, just the
Yeah.
black and white with the the orange red kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a really cool color scheme.
Yeah, see, I love the color scheme. I love the play feature. Yeah, I loved it all. And did you notice when they're scrubbing weapons that Evil Lyn is scrubbing the blue Stinkor shield?
I did
Like
not.
from the
I'll have to go
vintage
back
toy.
I'll have to go back and watch that. That's interesting.
Yep. And I always felt that those armor pieces that they were scrubbing looked a little hover robot-y, even though they're not.
I kind of
They're
got that feeling too.
Yeah, they're in that similar kind of shape.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he announces he is Stinkor. He emits a mighty fart, and we are let out with Skeletor laughing maniacally because even Skeletor loves a good fart joke.
Yep.
All right, so that leads us to our moral segment, which I mean, we've had a lot of morals here. You know, we got Roboto. You gotta pick yourself back up again. I think there's something even to be said with Stinkor. Maybe something about picking the right friends or the type of people to hang around with.
Mhm.
So what's our moral of today?
It feels like it's right along with the episode. It says losing confidence in one's abilities and being afraid to try again is the biggest mistake of all. You must be willing to weather setbacks. So
Okay.
I think it's a good moral. To like nobody is successful at something they're trying to do on the first attempt. For the most part, like if you're trying to be a famous golfer or a guitar player or whatever, like you're never going to just be great right out of the gates. So I think it's a good lesson, and it also it goes back to kind of what was going on in this episode, which is kind of why I was interested to hear what the other titles for this were, because I wouldn't be surprised to hear that maybe one or two of them relate more to Roboto in this episode than it does to Stinkor, because it does feel, as much as this is a Stinkor origin,
Right.
this is very much a Roboto story.
Yes, very much. And it's kind of interesting that Cyclone shows up during the moral segment.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it should have ended with Mandar's being like, "You're too late, Cyclone."
Yeah, you could have used you for the stink. Next time, your duty.
So we'll go right into the curious translations. So Italy just did a straight "Sweet Smell of Victory" translation.
Okay.
But Germany did have a different one, which is "Die Macht des Gestanks," which translates to "the power of stench."
Okay.
So, nope, they still stuck with the stinkiness.
I do feel like this is a good Roboto story. Like if you're,
it's an incredible.
I'm not a huge, I was never a huge Roboto fan as a kid. Like the vintage Roboto was not anything that I cared about. I love this redesign. So as a 2000X MYP Roboto, I love this character. And then you get to like Revelation, you give him a poncho. Like, who doesn't want Roboto with a poncho?
Right.
So I've grown to love him more as time has gone on. And if you're a Roboto fan, this is a really good episode for just that alone.
No, and this is where they're really hitting their stride, where like you don't need to see Roboto's Gambit before you see this out. Like you can watch Sweet Smell of Victory. You're going to be entertained. It's a good story. It's its own story. But if you have seen Roboto's Gambit, like it really picks up that continuity. And I like that it has those through lines without, being a mini series, basically.
Correct.
You don't have to binge everything. You can still enjoy this on its own, but it's really worth it if you've watched the entire series, up till now.
I also like that throughout this episode, we're at a point now where it's not just like, we're getting to the end of the episode, form Voltron and save the day. It's not, He-Man needs to come in and save the day and that's it. Like it had to go through, we needed the plan from Roboto to be able to succeed here. So it's not just the easy button, hit it, He-Man comes in and everything's good. So I feel like they're just telling better stories now that's incorporating all these characters rather than just being the He-Man show.
Absolutely. Some trivia. This is obviously Stinkor's first proper appearance. This is the first time Stinkor appears in any animated He-Man series up until this point. He would obviously later appear in Master of the Universe Revelation. But as of now, this is the only series that he was in. In the vintage mini comics, Stinkor was pitted with Mossman as his adversary, since one smelled good and one smelled bad. Interestingly, in this series, the two never even meet each other. So, and the closing joke with Stinkor farting was not in the original script. It was a last-minute addition by the assistant editor Steve Valino. So,
that I would say, I really enjoyed this episode. That's probably the part that I enjoyed the least. Like that part, to me, that did nothing. I didn't need that in there.
yeah.
Like that's kind of the cheap laugh at the very end. But I think the episode didn't need that. It was a serious enough, well written, a lot of action episode. I don't think that needs to be in there, but it also doesn't like ruin it for me. So
fair enough. A couple deleted scenes. So, I mean, there's a ton of deleted scenes. I'm going to point out a couple of them. The vial that Whiplash grabs and shakes of the Necrotia originally started churning and bubbling fast, indicating that it's very unstable before Triclops grabbed his wrist and slowly took it away.
Okay.
So originally there was going to be a little bit more, which I found interesting when I was watching it, that like Whiplash shakes and Triclops freaks out, but like nothing really happens.
Yeah.
So a removed scene showed Oedipus walking through the front gate of Snake Mountain, where Clawful and Whiplash were on guard duty, but got distracted by wrestling each other. And Oedipus just able to walk right by them. And originally,
that would be kind of interesting.
Yeah, it would just been nice just seeing him get in.
Like how he snuck in, because like I didn't think about it at the time, but it is like, how did he get all the way to Triclops,
right, when we've already shown like in Courage of Adam, where they've got to make Battle or Cringer look like Panther, and he's like they've established that it's not easy to just walk in here.
Right.
And originally in the script, after Battle Cat knocks the mask off Oedipus, He-Man sees Skeletor's forces flying towards the palace and spins his sword to create a strong wind, causing the stench from Oedipus to blow into the distance, hitting Skeletor and his forces and engulfing them.
See, why did they delete that? That would have been great.
Had just been awesome. Time.
That would have been like time. It would have taken just as much time to do that as he did to throw Oedipus at him. Like
possible.
I don't know.
Possible.
Yeah, I think that would have been cool, but that's all right.
Yep. All right. And that is our episode for today. So I guess it's time for our Power Sword ranking, Curtis. For those of you just tuning in to episode 23, you're a fool, but our Power Sword ranking is 3 Power Swords is the very best of the best, a perfect episode. 2 Power Swords is an above average episode. 1 Power Sword is a good, enjoyable episode. We got the Cosmic Enforcer. That's neither good nor bad. That's right down the middle. Then we got the Havoc Staffs. 1's bad, 2's worse. 3 Havoc Staffs. That episode should be banished into Despondos, never to be seen again, right with the island, forever and ever. Curtis, you want to go first, or should I?
I will go first.
Have at
it. The one thing I will say, I don't have a lot of negatives to say about this episode, but one thing I'll say that I think would have been beneficial throughout this series, or just in He-Man in general, is like you've got, we've seen all these episodes where at the end of the episode, He-Man is shaking somebody's hand and like welcoming them to the master. Like he's been recruiting nonstop, right? And all of these folks have certain abilities and certain strengths. You would think that Man-at-Arms especially would have some sort of way of assessing a threat and determining which master or masters would be most effective against that threat, and then specifically calling them in. It feels like even now, like through all of Filmation and through this series so far, like it's just kind of like whoever's on duty, whoever's around is just kind of the ones that get put into action. Like in this one, I didn't even think about it until we started talking, but yes, Cyclone would have been excellent for this. But at no point do they go, hey, let's call in Cyclone. There's no mechanism for saying, hey, we have a master that would be perfectly suited for this. Or like another thing that would have been cool at some point in this episode would have been to see, like, we see the kind of the stench rolling along the ground and stuff.
Yeah.
It would have been kind of cool to be able to see Mechanic out in the field with his head above the stench.
True.
Where it's not affecting him, and he can kind of like navigate or tell people where they need to go and stuff. He could be like the field general, like telling people where there's an opening for Battle Cat and He-Man or something. So I do feel like there could have been a better use of certain masters. That being said, I absolutely love this episode. It's my favorite. It is a 3. It is.
Oh, wow.
It is 3 power swords.
Dang.
Like I said, I love the Icons of Evil. I absolutely love it. And I feel like this could completely be its own issue in that Icons of Evil. It's just so good. I can't even, other than those few little things that I think is just kind of a season long thing that they could just use the masters better. I can't think of anything else that I would want differently in this episode. It's just great. So yeah, 3 out of 3.
Wow. Okay. I will say, I think it's, we've just to your point of like the duty roster, like we've seen before Man-at-Arms like giving out assignments and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I assume that like Cyclone was sent on an assignment that at the time Man-at-Arms is like, okay, Cyclone, you're good for this assignment.
Yeah.
And then like it kind of comes back to bite him in the butt. What would be nice to see is them attempting to call in, or they're just like, instead of just ignoring Cyclone, being like, Tila going, Man-at-Arms, can we get Cyclone? And he's like, no, I sent him over to the Crystal Sea. He's too far away. He'll never make it in time.
Yeah.
Like just acknowledging their existence in the universe.
Yeah.
Even when they're not being used would be nice.
Yeah, and that would work out well too, because you may not want a Cyclone in this episode because he may easily be able to deal with this threat, and you kind of want some of that drama. But yeah, explaining kind of why he can't be there would be nice. Yeah.
Yep. All right, I guess I am up. So obviously this is a great episode. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's an Evil Warrior episode that actually focuses on the Evil Warrior. So right off the bat, I'm happy because Stinkor is the threat throughout. He is the through line. You get a surprising Roboto story in there. Like I said, the big downfall for me of this episode is the fact that the plot is to rid Beastman of his stench. That is a great joke. It bugs me as like all this happened because of that.
I kind of like that because if you think about it, right, not every day is going to be like an end of the world scheme. Like there's got to be just normal days, right? That they're just doing other stuff, like you would think. So I like the fact that just a normal day can turn into this.
I mean, I don't know. It's too much for me. My brain can't compute it. Like it's, but even so, this is definitely for me a 2 power sword episode. This is well above average. It is just shy of greatness. Yeah, I can't call it perfect, but it's definitely right there. Honestly,
I can see getting caught on that part of it. Like it, I think of it kind of like I love customizing action figures, right?
Sure.
But I don't customize action figures every single day. Like sometimes I take a day where I'm doing something else. I got bills to pay. I got to go run some errands. I got to do this and that. But then throughout that day, something may happen to where I end up like, you know, maybe I get a figure in and I decide to pop and swap it real quick or whatever. You know, I feel like that's kind of like what this is. Like it wasn't a day that started off where Skeletor had a plan to take over the palace.
No, yeah.
But throughout what is happening, and they're just trying to get rid of this smell of Beast Man, and they're just kind of going about their day. And then it's like, oh, wait, I can use this. I can use this guy. And then it develops into a scheme.
If this had been, I guess my big hangups with it is the fact that, well, number one, I didn't bring it up before, but the logic of the fact that this Necrosha is sitting in this obviously abandoned laboratory in the middle of the sands, that Oedipus just happened to be there, and then the evil warriors showed up, but then He-Man just happened to track them there.
It's a lot of coincidences.
It's a lot of coincidence to start off with. Why is it? Everything else in this place is junk. But there's this one vial that's unstable and just sitting there unprotected. I
get what you're saying.
And then for it to, like, if this had just been Triclops, and like Skeletor shows up and like, Triclops, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm trying to get rid of Beastman's stench. Okay. But the idea that Skeletor is bothering himself with, like, all right, Triclops, Whiplash, Merman, you need to go get this so that we can do this. Like, that's where I'm fine with just, like, Triclops had nothing to do that day. He's like, I think I can use this stuff to get rid of Beastman's stench. Great.
So like, let's say that Triclops just shows up there. Oedipus happens to be there, whatever. But Triclops shows up there because of where this is. Maybe there's some sort of alarm on this old building or some sort of silent alarm that triggers Roboto to where Roboto goes to check it out, and it's just Roboto and Triclops there.
That would
same thing happens. The building falls down, all this kind of stuff. But, you know, you're not having all of the evil warriors and all the masters just show up here for something just to get rid of the stench of beast. I could see that.
Honestly would have been fine even with just Triclops. I could have done with no masters in the opening. If it's Triclops going through this building, Oedipus is already there because this is like his hideout.
Yeah.
And he's like, Triclops, that's one of Skeletor's evil warriors. And he freaking
just follows him back.
Sneaks into the pterodactyl or something. Like, you know.
I could see that. Yeah, I mean,
that would have been.
That makes sense. And I think that probably would take care of some of those plot holes at the beginning, but I don't care. This episode is just too much fun.
No, and I completely agree. I mean, I'm right there. It would probably be my top of the two swords, which I think we have to do that sometime. Kind of take the three swords and the two swords and kind of rank them individually. Maybe at the end of the series or something, just to kind of give a definitive list. But this is definitely like a high two sword for me.
Gotcha. Beautiful.
All right. Well, guys, we want to thank you for tuning in. We are fast approaching the end of the season. Do you want to thank Yuka again for the wonderful unofficial guide to He-Man the Master of the Universe 2000 series. This is where we've gotten a lot of the trivia, the curious translations, all that. And remember, for every comment you make on each one of our episodes, you are entered into a chance to take home a copy of this for yourself, unless you are Curtis Ackerman or Sean Scavarna or Matthew Dooch. But yes, so make sure to like, comment, share, subscribe down below. And until next time, make sure to go watch Separation.
Oh, come on.